In this video, we're going to be going over the HTML DOM, or Document Object Model. In this screencast, I'm using the following webpage at stimuluscenter.org for my example. And if you'd like to follow along, I'm going to include a link beneath the video. So let's get started. I want to view the source for this page. So I'm going to press Ctrl-U on my PC or Command-Option-U on a Mac to bring up the source code. And we see the HTML that's being displayed in our browser window right here. As you can see, there's a lot going on here. I imagine a lot of this is pretty confusing right now, but don't worry, we're going to be going over all of this stuff soon enough. Recall that HTML is like the structural blueprint of a building. It defines the underlying structure of all the elements that you see on a web page. HTML is a markup language, and you create it in a text document, PHP Storm or your text editor. And the building blocks of this HTML document are the tags. Some of this may look familiar. There's a doc type up here, the head tag, title. We scroll down to the body, and here we see some divisions with a class of container, a header tag, and so on and so forth. Many of these tags are descriptive in that they instruct the browser as to what type of content that it should render to the page. I'd like to take an even deeper look as to the structure of this web page. And I'm using Chrome, so I'm going to open up DevTools to take a better look at what's going on here. In order to open up DevTools in Chrome, I could do this several ways. I can go up to the top right menu here, click and go down to More Tools, Developer Tools, or I can use the keyboard shortcut of Control-Shift-I, or that's Command-Option-I on the Mac. Now that I have DevTools open, I can get a much better look at what's going on this web page. I just want to add that I strongly suggest that each of you spend some time getting to know DevTools really well, as it's an incredibly helpful tool that we'll be using a lot in class. I'm going to include a link to the DevTools documentation beneath the video. Here, I see some HTML code on the left and some CSS styles on the right. We'll be getting more into the CSS later on as we cover that material. I can browse through the HTML here, and I just want to make a point that this is not the actual HTML for the page itself, but this is the code that the browser is rendering to your screen. There are quite a few elements that are not visible on the page, such as these meta tags, but as we scroll down, we can get to what's actually visible before you. Here's a header, here's this banner image, and as we mouse over, we can see these areas being highlighted. This is one of the great things about DevTools. You can click into the elements and you can inspect them. And I'm seeing element within element nested here. I can click in and I can hover over all of these areas. As I move through the HTML here, which is being rendered to the screen, I can almost envision a tree-like structure, element nested within element, and it goes deeper and deeper, and so on and so forth. As a matter of fact, I could probably draw this out. Let me go back up to the top. I see a div with a class of container, and it contains a header, two divs, a section, and a footer. I could probably map this out by hand. And this is the Document Object Model, or DOM for short. All of these HTML elements within elements, organized and mapped out here, comprises the DOM for this page. It's a tree-like structure that we can draw out manually. And I'm going to show you an example based on this structure right here. So on our sample page, we had a div with a class of container. And within that div, we had 5 other elements nested within it: a header, 2 divs, a section, and a footer. And these HTML elements had classes. Here we have a class of clearfix on the header. This div has a class of product heading, and this section has a class of product content. let's go even deeper. Now I'm not drawing out the entire page because of brevity. I couldn't all fit it here on the screen. But let's just go into a few elements to give you a better idea. Inside footer, we had a div with a class of row and a class of footer. And inside this div, there's more divs. And we have some developer humor here. Lumens, oh god, why, and footer nonsense. I want to see what's inside footer nonsense. And we have some text and a couple of A tags for links. And if I go back over into DevTools, we can see that this is exactly what I did. I looked in here and I drew out the DOM by hand. The browser builds the document object model from the HTML, and it uses the DOM here to render the proper page content, the images, the text, the paragraphs, and each tag in the HTML document becomes an element in the DOM tree that the browser displays on the page. Moving through the elements of a web page is referred to as traversing the DOM. And we're traversing the DOM right now here using DevTools. And with the help of tag attributes and such as classes and IDs, we can identify and target these specific HTML elements and manipulate or interact with them using CSS and JavaScript. For example, we can target all of these heading tags right here, and perhaps we want to make them all red. This is really neat how you can do this live in DevTools, and it's one of the things that makes it such a powerful tool. And when it comes to these HTML elements with classes on them, that helps us identify them and target them in a much more powerful way. And if you're confused as to what all of these classes mean, many of these are built into Bootstrap, which is the front-end development framework we will be using in class. And we'll be learning that in the coming weeks. So, to summarize, a web page is comprised of an HTML document. This HTML document can be displayed in your browser window, or it can be viewed on its own as plain HTML code. But it's the same document in both cases. The document object model provides a way to model or represent these objects contained in the HTML document so your browser can render a web page to your screen.